All right, breaking news out of Major League Baseball into CBS Sports HQ, where the Mets and Rangers have agreed to deal and send Max Scherzer to the Texas Rangers. And that has been confirmed by our Jim Bowden. The three-time Cy Young Award winner has decided to waive his no-trade clause in order for this deal to go through. Scherzer has spent just a season and a half in Queens, most notably headlining a record $343 million payroll for the New York Mets. All right, let's bring in CBS Sports MLB insider. There he is, Jim Bowden, also former executive of the year with the Cincinnati Reds. All right, Jim, Max Scherzer was disappointed that they got rid of David Robinson, who was traded to the Miami Marlins on Thursday. Was talked about his disappointment, said he wanted to meet with Steve Cohen and the brass. That looks like that did happen. What do you expect for Scherzer to do next as far as the expectations when this trade will be finalized? And are you surprised that this deal went down here with Scherzer opting to go and get traded to the Rangers?
Yeah, Larry, I mean, look, we know the New York Mets are sellers. As you mentioned, the minute they traded Robertson to Miami, that is the beginning of what is going to be a fire sale by the Mets. There's no question about that. The Texas Rangers all in on trying to win. They smell an opportunity to get to a World Series. They knew they needed another ace, another top-of-the-rotation starter once Jacob deGrom went down with the Tommy John surgery. And so Chris Young, the GM of the Texas Rangers, has been talking to the Mets about both Verlander and Scherzer. And what was evident is that Scherzer was the most likely fit for them. Now, they worked very hard on the prospects that were going to end up going from Texas to New York. Max Scherzer has a huge contract at $43.3 million this year. There's a player option for $43.3 million next year that he's expected to opt into. And so this deal was very complicated. And one of the complications, as you mentioned, was he had to waive his full no-trade clause, which he did late this afternoon. So the only things that are left to complete this deal right now are the physicals and medicals with all the players that are involved in this deal. I'm told there's also a couple of financial considerations that are still being worked out by both parties, but I'm also assured by both parties that this deal will eventually get done. We can't give the names of the players that are going to be going from Texas to New York until the deal is actually completed and all the medicals and physicals have been solved, because those players have not been told. But this is a significant deal for the Texas Rangers, Larry. They needed another starter. They've got Nathan Eovaldi, John Gray, and Dane Dunning, all of which have ERAs of 3.7 or below. They have been key. But their other two starters, Andrew Heaney and Martin Perez, both have ERAs north of 4.5. And they really felt like they needed one more ace. They needed a guy that was used to pitching in playoff games, that was used to pitching in the biggest stage. And we've all seen Max Scherzer win world championships. So this is a huge day for the Texas Rangers, no doubt. And for the Mets, it's very clear where they're going.
Yeah, Rangers and Mets looking to finalize this deal here before the trade deadline, which is Tuesday for Max Scherzer. Like you said, still has $43 million left next year on that option for Max Scherzer. You just talked about the Rangers now leading the AL West, couple of game lead there over the Houston Astros, 60-44 on the season. Lost Jacob deGrom at the beginning, early parts of the year there, former New York Met as well. Looks like the New York Mets are the farm system for the Texas Rangers now. What are your expectations for the Rangers here as they trug along towards the playoffs? Are they a real contender in the American League with the Tampa Bay Rays?
I mean, look, I think Texas is in for a fight with Houston. We'll wait and see what the Astros do at the trade deadline. My understanding is the Astros have actually talked to the Mets about maybe reacquiring Justin Verlander. Wouldn't that be something if both of these aces end up in the same pennant race? So that'll be interesting. But I do think this trade for the Mets improves their chances not only to win the division, but more importantly, to win some postseason series. So I think this is a plus, because remember, the Texas Rangers have the best offense in baseball. They score runs at will, and that lineup is strong top to bottom. What they were lacking was one more starting pitcher, and certainly Max Scherzer answers that bell for them. And on the other side, for the New York Mets, they had the biggest payroll in baseball, and they're still 17, 18 games behind the Atlanta Braves, and they know they've got to get younger and they got to start building this thing the right way. So to trade Scherzer to get prospects, also free up the money, which is significant as they head into the offseason without having Max Scherzer's exposure on the books, will give them flexibility come free agency, especially if they want to make a run at Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, well, so the Rangers now, like I said, a 2-game lead over those Houston Astros can bring in Scherzer, and they got nasty Nate there, Nathan Eovaldi. Not a bad little 1-2 punch there for the Texas Rangers. You just mentioned Justin Verlander possibly going to the American League and going back to the Tampa Bay Rays, and we know what they're doing in the American League East, still trailing those Baltimore Orioles. What's next for Justin Verlander, also making over $40 million as we look at the Mets now, getting rid of almost $80 million just like that if they get rid of Justin Verlander? You think he's next here before the deadline on Tuesday?
Yeah, I think the Mets are they're gonna shop him. They're also shopping their relievers, Adam Ottavino and Brooks Raley. They've offered outfielders Mark Canha and Tommy Pham to contenders as well. Justin Verlander's situation, though, is going to be interesting because I don't think it's a slam dunk that he's going to waive his no-trade clause as Max Scherzer did. And I'm not sure, if he's just going to carte blanche because he likes New York. He picked New York, and he's happy there. And I think that, he wanted to stay in New York. So if, in fact, they can find a deal for Verlander and understand that the Dodgers, the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Houston Astros have all talked to the Mets about Verlander. So where he ends up remains to be seen. But I believe the Mets have a really good trade partner potentially in the Los Angeles Dodgers because the Dodgers have the kind of pitching prospects they can offer the Mets that the Mets farm system needs badly. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But yes, I think Verlander is next on the docket in terms of big names being traded after this Scherzer deal is finally completed.
Yeah, they got a little less than 72 hours here, Jim. We're looking at about 69 hours here for the New York Mets here before the trade deadline. And we were just talking about the Mets here, the $343 million payroll. That is a record. They're almost $350 million, and you're still 5 games under 500, 17 games behind the Braves in the NL East, 6.5 back of the wild card. What do the New York Mets do next, Jim? How do they get back into this? You cannot rebuild in New York. Steve Cohen, $15 billion, multi-billionaires, got the big pockets. How do they get back and get ready here for 2024 and be a real contender and contend next season?
Well, I think they have to rebuild. I think they have to keep getting younger. I mean, I'm glad that Francisco Alvarez and Brett Beatty are getting some experience this year. They need to keep getting younger players. I mean, Ronnie Mauricio will be coming up in the near future. They need to build a younger starting rotation. There's no question about that as well. We'll wait and see if they get a young starter back from Texas. I'm being told they will. I haven't seen the names yet, so we'll wait, but I'm told one of them is going to be a young starting pitcher, and I think that's what they need to do. They need to look around baseball and watch the success of teams like Cincinnati and Arizona and Tampa Bay and all these young athletic teams that are having success. This is a new era. The new rules that were in place this year. You win in different ways than you won in the last several years. So I think the Mets need to get younger. They need to get more athletic, and they certainly need some young, big arms to help build that rotation before they can become legitimate contenders with a team like the Atlanta Braves in their own division.
I agree with you. Mets, a couple of old pitchers, always waiting on the 3-run homer. Needs to surround Pete Alonso and those other players there. Francisco Lindor there with the New York Metropolitans. Here's Jim Bowden, our CBS Sports MLB Insider. Jim, I know you're going to be busy there. Stay by the phone. We really appreciate your coverage there. Here's Mad Max Scherzer, his career timeline. He's been on 5 different teams in his Major League Baseball career. This would be his 6th team if that trade is finalized and goes through with the Texas Rangers. You can see there he played with the Diamondbacks, Tigers, Nationals, Dodgers, and of course currently on the Mets right now until this trade goes through with the Texas Rangers. The 3-time Cy Young Award winner has pitched very well. Once again, he's owed over $43 million next year, getting up there in age, around 40 years of age, but still can get it done. Pitched well Friday night for the New York Mets in his last start, 7 innings there for the New York Mets in the win over his former team, the Nationals. Wait and find out if this deal is completed. Max Scherzer potentially going to the Texas Rangers, waiting on final word.